This entire story is one of the craziest series of events I have ever experienced. I was almost kidnapped once. Well, kidnapped is a misnomer. I was 24 and at a gas station. Here's the full story. I worked at a bar. It was about 3:30 in the morning and I was driving home. I was on the highway and my tire went out. This goddamn tire. I was in the actual worst spot of my drive. There weren't many places I avoided, but even during the day, I avoided that exit and the gas station at the corner. Well, that's where I was, and that was my option. I went in and asked the clerk if they had an air pump. This was 15 years ago, and you are still allowed to go inside gas stations at night. It was a typical gas station layout. I was at the counter talking to the employee, and there was a door a few feet to my left. There were parking spaces that faced this store in front of the door. Directly across the store to my right was another door. I hadn't been inside longer than 45 seconds when a car pulled up across all of the parking spaces directly in front of the door I was closest to, and 4 men got out of the car. They left the doors open and the driver stayed in the car. It was still running. They came in the store and surrounded me. Not once did one of these men touch me. I was so naive about it all that I kept apologizing, thinking I was in their way as I kept trying to move back. They crawled me almost all the way out of the door before I ever knew what was happening. Like, the door was open and I was a step away from being outside. The store clerk, however, whose name I never learned but who will forever be my greatest hero, clearly saw what was happening and went into full-blown attack mode. He had a bat behind the counter and he jumped over the counter swinging that damn bat at these men like it was his life on the line. I was still just a sweet dumb girl about it all. I was like, whoa, what was going on? It was when the man got back in the car and squealed around the other side of the store as the employee ran to the other door to try and lock it at first that I realized what was happening. He got it locked, barely. The man stayed out there for a minute, revving the engine, and then took off. Circled the store a few times and finally left. So, my tire. A few days before, I bought a used tire and then installed it on my car. I was poor. I drove a lot, I had college and work, and between the two, I was driving a considerable amount each day. My tire didn't feel right though. It felt weird and bouncy. I was going to bring it back down there the moment I had the time to do so. Well, it didn't last that long. After what had just happened, of course the store clerk wasn't just going to let me go outside and fill up my tire. He kept the store locked and came out with me. He wanted me to stay in the store, but I actually felt safer being with him. He was filling up my tire, and I saw it bulging out badly on the side. Right as I was like, oh no, stop, my tire exploded. When my tire exploded, something hit my leg. I am not kidding, and I swear on everything I have ever cared about in this world, that a motherfucking beanie baby flew out of my tire and hit my leg. At that point, I just drove home on my exploded tire and dealt with it all later. The fit I threw at that tire shop the next day, beanie baby in my hand, and they refused to refund me or even replace the tire. It was $32. I hate them so much I will never forget. I still trash them and I haven't lived in the city for a decade, nor do I know if they're still in business. I actually kind of blocked out the whole kidnapping attempt part for a long time. But the whole first part of my story, I think it's probably the most fucked up thing a complete stranger has done to me. When I started 3rd grade, I transferred to a new school. The school I went to prior was an abnormally small private Catholic school. I think they only had about 5 teachers and under 30 students total. The school was so small that the cafeteria doubled as an art classroom. With the size of the school, it was also very protected. Everyone in the school was friends with each other. There were no such thing as bullies because everyone's parents were friends and those parents were also great friends of the teachers. Aside from the occasional prepubescent children nagging and whining amongst ourselves and outbursts that young kids have, it was pretty great of an atmosphere. When I got to my new school on the first day, which was a public school in Pittsburgh, I was so out of my element, it was insane. I couldn't comprehend why everyone wore different clothes, why there were so many people, why the teachers were so brash and somewhat aggressive. Nobody seemed friendly. Nothing made sense. It was a total culture shock. Fast forward to lunch. They announced they had a salad bar. This was the most normal part of the day for me, because at my old school, we usually had lunches like salad bars. I made a few acquaintances prior to lunch, which gave me tremendous relief, as the biggest worry I had that day was wondering if I'd have to eat lunch by myself or with a table of people I don't know. Me and the two other kids at the time made it through the lunch line and got to the salad bar. I started to fix up my tray with the most wonderful salad a kid could ask for. Salad, ranch, croutons, bacon bits. As soon as I turned away from the salad bar, a very tall and Yankee girl with any pigtails and breads just stood in front of me and practically made sure I would accidentally walk right into her. The obvious outcome: my tray collided with her tray, which sent the salad flying, covering her mostly in ranch dressing. I lost all of my salad, and everyone was fucking chuckling about it. She decided to start crying, and it went from bad to even worse, because I had the teachers rush over to me and grab me by my arm and drag me to the principal's office. I got yelled at for about 10 minutes and was told that my first impression was certainly not a good one, and the girl had to have her parents come in and bring her a change of clothes. Nobody would listen to my side of the story, and this idiot told everyone that I threw my salad at her so she would get out of my way. I never met this girl in my life. I didn't even know she existed prior to her sabotaging me and making me go hungry. When I explained that it was an accident, they would retort to, "How? You saw her standing there." I sat in the office, starving, crying, and scared that my mom would beat my ass. She came down to the school shortly after, and this was the light at the end of the tunnel. The principal takes her into his office, and I start to hear yelling. I start crying harder because now Mama is in trouble. But then I realized the yelling wasn't from the principal, it was my mom. My mom went the fuck off on the principal. I heard things such as, "It is his first day, do you really think he would throw his fucking salad in her face?" And, "How dare you not let my son eat?" My mom took me home, got me McDonald's, and I lived in total fear for the rest of 3rd grade. Mom can always be there to save me, but goddammit Mom, you fucking killed it. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe and watch more and more. I knew a guy who got spiked in a group, and he went fucking Hulk on anyone near him. He punched the cop and was screaming like a banshee. He was usually a bruised kind of guy, but not violent like that. But he was also about 6'3" and was huge from playing rugby. It took 6 police officers to hold him down enough to get him in the van. It was particularly bad because he just looked like a typical roid rage type of incident, where a massive dude got mad for some reason. He didn't, but he made his reactions insane. The flip side of this was when my ex found one of my younger cousin's friend slumped in an alleyway with some older guys surrounding her. He knew something was wrong, but thought she just drank too much. But he went over and moved the men around her. They got shitty and he got angry. They left in a hurry and he tried to pick her up, but her legs didn't work. She couldn't even speak. Her eyes rolled back and she was like a rag doll. So he carried her around the corner to a taxi, who refused them entry because she could vomit. My ex got mad but just called an ambulance and waited with her. He then went to the hospital with her too. The nurses were terrible to her, called her names when they thought she was unconscious. He wasn't, and kicked off with them because it was horrendous what they were calling her. She was only 15, and they were just generally rough with her. He'd called me by this time and explained. I called my cousin to tell her parents because he couldn't unlock her phone. My cousin did so, and her mother said, "Put her in a taxi for fuck's sake. What did she do now?" Which then was relayed to my ex. I'll mention at this point that my ex had serious anger issues, so I could tell he was nearing the point where he was going to explode. He wasn't usually very sympathetic, so the situation was a particular time where he felt very strongly about what had happened to her. He ended up waiting until she got tasks and fluids and was talking. He told her what her mother said and was like, "What the fuck is her issue? You're sick." The girl just looked at him and said, "Nah, that's normal for her," and just started crying. He ended up staying with her until they signed her out and sent her to my cousin's house in a taxi instead. Who knows what would have happened to her if he hadn't been walking past. It makes me feel sick. I have been spiked, and I was incredibly lucky that only 2 of us out of 11 were spiked, and the rest of the women we were with were completely badass and jumped into action. All I remember is vomiting on my shoes, a taxi driver giving me half a mug of jug to throw up in, and them all dragging me by the arms up the hotel steps. Then, the next day, I was lying in my room listening to them whisper outside my door saying they should absolutely check if I've suffocated on my own vomit. It was fucking horrible, and I don't wish it on anyone. I was abroad too, so double panic situations.